All right, guys, just want to welcome back to the Everything College Football podcast. Today I'll be doing my preview and prediction for a ranked Big Ten matchup between Illinois and Nebraska, two teams that have started off the year very well, undefeated, leading them being in the AP top 25. Nebraska, 8.5-point favorites, 43.5 is the total. 8 p.m. Eastern time on Fox Friday night from Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. Starting with the Illinois offense, Luke Altmaier has played much better football last year. The offense just did not click with him one bit. He had 10 interceptions, wasn't always that accurate. Late in the year when John Paddock was on the field, he did a phenomenal job running this offense and throwing the football. So it was certainly a low point, I think, for Altmaier. This offseason was tough, but so far, he's, playing much better than expected. 69% completion rating, 647 through the air, 6 touchdowns, no picks. He's handled, the blitz very well this season. Has typically struggled in his career versus pressure, though. Last year that was his biggest problem because he was no good against pressure. Right now, he's doing a pretty good job from that. Though, this is a guy who's pretty much a veteran at this point, 4 years in college football. He has a nice group of weapons. It's really just the duo of Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. Franklin was a guy that was significantly productive for UTSA in the past. Didn't work out last year at Ole Miss. He arrives very late in the cycle here. Had 99 yards on 9 receptions against Kansas. Had another 66 this past week. He's up to almost 200 yards receiving, while Pat Bryant has 235 and 4 touchdowns. Other than that, no one's really touching the ball. Malik Elzy, I think this is a guy who can be an impactful player for them down the road. He's got 2 grabs for 51 yards and a score. Colin Dixon, 3 for 43. And a couple of other guys that have, just 1 or 2 receptions. So the receiving core is really just this main duo. And again, I think Elzy can get involved as well. Passing game, though, has looked pretty solid for Illinois. It's provided them, pretty adequate balance, and they're not turning over the football, most importantly. The run game for Illinois figured to be a bit of a strength coming into the season. They didn't do great against Kansas. Had, almost 140 as a team against Central Michigan, and then the opener they had, a pretty, good game as well. Keaton Feagin, this is a pretty impressive player for being 250 pounds. He has some nice pop in his run. $173 and 3 scores so far this year. 1 touchdown in each game. Yards per carry total, though, the last 2 weeks has been 2.5. So, certainly not getting as great of a push as he opened up the year with. Josh McCray, he was able to get on the field last week after not playing against Kansas. 54 yards for him on 8 carries. I expect them to be the 1-2 punch. He's 235 pounds in his own right. So there's a lot of power here. Khalil Valentine, a guy who's 190 pounds as a freshman, certainly on the slimmer side. Can be more explosive for them. Looks like they're going to probably opt to, go with a power run game. 153 yards as a team so far. The offensive line, they've been pretty good in pass protection. 120th nationally, though, in tackles for loss allowed. So the run game certainly having some struggles in terms of staying consistent. J.C. Davis has been a nice addition at left tackle for them. Josh Geske, a veteran at left guard, playing very well. Josh Kruitz at center, having an all right season. I think in terms of pass protection, he's certainly leaving a lot to be desired. Cy Chrysler at right guard, a guy they think could really blossom into a good player. Then Melvin Priestley at right tackle is having a great season in terms of run blocking. He's allowed a little bit of pressure in pass pro. This is an offensive line, though. Brett Bielema, obviously this is a guy that wants to run the football and be physical. And the O-line, I think so far they're exceeding expectations. Again, they're giving up a lot of negative plays, but the pass protection has been good. And that's ideal because Altmaier, when he has a clean pocket, can throw some nice balls. He can be an effective player. So the Illinois offense so far, probably exceeding expectations. They have to, make sure they don't turn the ball over here, though, on the road. They've done a good job of that so far, but they haven't, played on the road yet. So that's something you got to look for. How will these change with the offensive line, with their communication? How will that be affected? If the run game really does stall it completely, I think this offense might be in for a world of hurt against this type of defense that Nebraska is going to opt to roll with. So we'll see what happens. But right now, it's been a pretty respectable unit that's putting up 33 points per game. Moving to the Nebraska offense, Dylan Raiola, 5-star recruit, comes in. He's elevated this offense already. Last year, they were one of the worst at throwing the football. QBs had 10 touchdowns and 16 picks, less than 140 yards per game, 52% comp rate. They were just awful throwing the football. And so that's why, 223 yards per game for Raiola, 74% comp rate, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. Doesn't matter who you're playing. These are significant improvements, and that certainly has led to a lot of success for this offense early on. Hasn't exactly been a barrage by any means. Only 40 against UTEP, 28 against Colorado, where they had a lot of plays called back by penalty, and then 34 against a pretty woeful opponent in NIU. But Raiola has done a good job of playing within structure, really running the offense well, has nice pass catchers, Isaiah Neyor, finally being able to showcase his talents as the leading pass catcher, 187 and 2 scores. Jalen Lloyd, 95 yards and only 2 receptions. I mean, he's a big-time playmaker. Ramir Johnson and Jacoby Barney, they're second on the team with 10 receptions each. Johnson getting a lot of checkdowns. Jamal Banks, a player I think can continue to emerge for them, 7 for 76 in a score this year. And then Carter Nelson's been a bit of a pleasant surprise. So this is a passing attack. I think they have weapons, especially Neyor and Lloyd. I mean, that's a lot of speed there. Banks is a veteran with some good hands. Great trio of pass catchers they have there. Going to be playing a very good secondary, though. So trying to get deep and making plays, catching the football at the sticks. It's certainly going to be something they have to be consistent at doing throughout the game. The thing for Nebraska is this rushing attack is phenomenal. 171 yards per game. Dante Dowdell, the Oregon transfer, he's emerged as the RB1. 184 yards and 3 scores. Emmett Johnson, Ramir Johnson really splitting carries as the number 2. And even have Gabe Irvin still in the backfield as well, who hasn't been very efficient, but he does have 2 touchdowns, both coming in the season opener. Has only saw 5 carries over the last 2 games, but this is a deep backfield nonetheless. And it's led by an offensive line that is a veteran unit. Turner Cochran at left tackle has certainly upped his play a good bit. Justin Evans-Jenkins at left guard. I love what they have in Ben Scott at center. He's been a phenomenal pass blocker. Micah Mazukawa, a transfer who's slotted in at right guard. He's been playing very well. Right tackle, I think, is a bit of a concern. Bryce Benhart, he's a guy who's been around a long time, but it's never really been that great. Not having the best start to the year either. Certainly an area of concern for them. Can be a bit of liability. Still a veteran at the end of the day. The quality play of this O-line is why they've been so successful so far this year. Seems like they're, yet to really open things up, though, because I certainly think that, the balance is nice, but I would have liked to see them score some more points and some more explosive plays, I think, overall, and certainly continuing to spread the wealth of wide receivers, what you want to see. Offense has been great, though, 50% on third down. This team, really good, even though they weren't all that stellar against Colorado on third down. This is a team that is significantly improved on this side of the ball, and they still have a true freshman at quarterback. They have a lot of transfers at a variety of different positions here, so still a work in progress. It's still only September, so this offense should continue to get better. Playing a stout defense here, though, certainly going to go a long way in that growth. Looking at that Illini defense, the defensive line really wasn't all that touted coming into the preseason. I'm still not all confident in that front three. I think Dennis Briggs, he's a good transfer for them. He's a guy who you can really lean on against the run. Trot Edwards, Alex Bray, Pat Farrell. I mean, this is just not that good of a defensive line. The edge rushers, though, were a group that I'm absolutely going to rave about. And I thought coming into the year, and even last year, I was high on them. But I think this year, they can offset kind of a poor defensive line, losing a big end talent. Obviously, to the NFL certainly doesn't help. But these outside backers, I think, are certainly going to offset that this year. Seth Coleman and Gabe Jackas, Jarazon Newton last year was just so good at getting penetration up the middle. Now they're going to have to get it from these edge rushers, though, and they're already starting to do so. Jackas has 3 TFL, Coleman has 2 through 3 games. These guys have been really good. And, of course, when it comes to pass rushing, they have 5 sacks as a team. A respectable number this far through the year. Only 1 coming from that duo I just talked about. Joe Barner, though, a freshman that's gotten on the field. He leads the team with a sack and a half, so they might even get more production. They might get more depth than they kind of originally thought they would have. And, of course, in middle linebacker, Dylan Rozak. He's a phenomenal player, second on the team in tackles right now. That's the thing you want to look for. I talked about, Bryce Benhart, a right tackle, being a liability. They have guys that can win that matchup. And on the other side, I think they can give Cochran a run for his money as well. Not all confident in that front three. They just got to be sturdy and, serviceable. Just don't get demolished against the run. Hold your own. Are they capable of doing that? I certainly think that they can here in this matchup. Not all that confident in it, but I don't think they're just going to get demolished on the ground by any means. But I definitely think if, Nebraska starts playing fast and they're winning towards the boundary, then you might be in for, pretty long afternoon. But they got to be able to put these pass rushers in situations to win, second and third and long. I think they'll have some good success when it gets to, mixing things up against Raiola. Aaron Henry, a good defensive coordinator. I think this year, last season they disappointed. I think this year is probably going to be the season where they really start to showcase, great improvements on defense, kind of like they were a couple of years ago. I think, again, those edge rushers will go a long way in doing so. Now looking at the Illinois secondary, a unit that I certainly raved about in the preseason, Miles Scott. He's been a phenomenal player for them from his safety spot early on this season. You look at Xavier Scott, no relation. These guys have been complete ball hawks so far this year. Between them, they have 5 interceptions. It's a pretty good number through only 3 weeks. As a team, they have 6 with transfer from Ohio, Torrey Cox, as an outside corner, coming down with another one. This is a team that's got plenty of playmakers. Those players I just talked about are also pretty good against the run. They're important tacklers. Caleb Patterson, a guy who hasn't missed a tackle this year, he's been pretty solid in coverage as well. I think there's opportunities out wide for them to potentially attack the corners, at safety, though, and in the slot. And, I think they're pretty stout in that regard. Matthew Bailey is having a phenomenal year. More of a box safety for them. Doesn't really play, deep third really a whole lot. He's kind of made a transition to almost playing a linebacker. But I think for Bailey, this is a guy that has been the leading tackler for them, of course, can play some slot if they need him to do so. Player I thought would break out last year hasn't really came to fruition, but right now they're putting everything together. This is a healthy unit going up against, again, a young quarterback. Aaron Henry's certainly going to dial things up for these guys to be successful. I think it's going to be a great matchup. Illinois top to bottom, phenomenal defense. Certainly, they can travel and they can play good in this game and it can keep them in this contest. So I think Illinois is very happy with what they have. Forcing 9 turnovers already this year through 3 games. That's why they were so good against Kansas, is because they were able to come away with 4 takeaways, 3 of them being interceptions. So this is a defense right now. It's playing lights out. They're able to create. That's good for an offense. It's kind of maybe going to be more of a unit that struggles in this game. As you look at the Nebraska defense, they're led by a defensive line that's pretty stout in their own right. Ty Robinson, Nash Hutchmucher. These guys have tremendous power. They're veterans. They have size. Cameron Lendhart, Jamari Butler. These guys are stepping up this year. It's a pretty deep unit, top to bottom. You don't have to name all the guys, but I think in terms of that starting 4, you're pretty happy with what they have. They're hoping that Jamari Butler will be able to get to go in this game. He was questionable for the last one. They held him out, so he should be able to go. He's probably their best defensive lineman from last year. Very happy with what they have there. This is a really good run defense, and it was last year too. Other than the Michigan game, other than that, they're pretty stout for the remainder of the season. Last year, they held Illinois to 21 rushing yards on 19 attempts. So, they're not really fazed by this O-line one bit. I think this is a defense that can certainly overwhelm Altmaier and company. You look at the middle of their defense. They also have good linebackers. Stephon Thompson coming over, reuniting with Tony White has paid big dividends. John Bullock, he was a great player for them last season. He's already off to a good start. The linebacking group, has been, an interesting unit for them because they have been kind of unrecognized. Mekhi Gabor is another one that's really stepped up this year. And I think they're going to get more recognition this year because they just have the veterans and they have guys who are versatile. And that includes Deshaun Singleton in the secondary, also having a phenomenal season. You talk about the duo of Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. They're going to be up against some really good corners. Marquise Buford, Tommy Hill. These guys, they play a lot of snaps. They don't come off the field much because they don't have to. They're just so good. Probably one of the better cornerback duos in the country. Sierra Wright might be a liability when he gets on the field. He transferred in. Hasn't been all that stellar this year. And then, of course, Malcolm Hartzog, a phenomenal player in the slot. Has been a little iffy in coverage. Has missed some tackles as well. So not playing his best football so far. But I expect him to get back in sync eventually. And then, of course, Isaac Gifford is the leader of this defense. He's having a phenomenal start to the year. Nebraska is good, top to bottom. Gifford was the leading tackler last year. He's already doing that so far this season. I think this is a defense that is significantly underrated. They're pretty complete at all levels. Maybe not as dominant when it comes to edge rushing. Prince Will Manellin, MJ Sherman, or who they have there. Some, a former transfer, and then a younger guy. So pass rushing has been a little bit shaky so far. They don't really have the same threat, but they do have 9 sacks as a team because the interior threat is just so dominant. So this is going to be an interesting test for an Illinois O-line that is. It's playing pretty good football at this moment in time. Looking at the team comparisons, tail of the tape. At quarterback, I'm going to call it even. I think Altmaier's playing much better football, and Raiola's still just a young freshman, only playing 3 games so far. First, real test, I guess you could say here. They did play Colorado, but I wouldn't really consider that a test. Like the Illinois defense is. The next 4 categories are all going to the Huskers. Running back, I think they're better. Wide receiver, I think they're more complete on the offensive line. The D-line, I think, gets a big edge as well. Linebacker is a great unit for Illinois. And then the secondaries are even. They're both phenomenal units. A lot more big plays being made by the Fighting Illini secondary so far this year. But those are both still strong units. And I really do think they're even across the board in that regard. even though there's probably more talented players for the Cornhuskers. Very tough to call it there. We'll give Illinois, though, the edge at linebacker. I like their edge rushers, and on the interior, they're pretty stout as well. Moving to the final thoughts in the prediction. For Illinois, they need to be better in the trenches. They need to have some balance, and they need the secondary to have a chance to make plays, by putting them in, long down at distances. But overall, they just got to be better in the trenches. I think right now, you saw it on the team comparisons, Nebraska has the edge. It's not an overwhelming edge, but I certainly think they have the capability of being more stout in that regard. And even if it's kind of cliche, every game comes down to the line of scrimmage, right? I think it's certainly going to be important in this Big Ten contest where both secondaries are capable of eliminating the opposing passing attack. Spark the run game and avoid committing turnovers for Nebraska. You see Illinois forcing them in droves, it seems. If you set them up in short fields, they will have an opportunity to win this game. 27-14 for me, though. I just think they're going to limit the run game. I think Nebraska will, in their own regard, run the ball pretty well. And I alluded to the trenches just a second ago, and I think that's going to be the ultimate difference maker here. And I think Altmaier will make a mistake or two that we haven't seen just yet going on the road here. To Lincoln's not going to be easy. Nebraska should get this one done, slightly cover the spread there. I think this game can be close. I definitely think it'll be on the lower scoring end, though, so pencil in that under. For today's episode, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.